people, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This Week in Cincinnati on WCPO 9.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Tanya O'Rourke. This Week in Cincinnati is returning. We've been on hiatus for several months because of the pandemic. We begin today with my interview with Hamilton County Commissioner Victoria Parks. She was appointed to the office in January after the passing of Commissioner Todd Fortune. Parks was Fortune's chief of staff. In November, voters will decide who will next fill that seat on the commission. Parks was not able to run. I spoke with Commissioner Parks via Zoom. We started by talking about how Todd Fortune continues to make a difference in Hamilton County. Victoria Parks, thanks so very much for being with us for This Week in Cincinnati. I really appreciate you joining us, and I think I want to start with this because I think most people don't really know who you are. Who is Victoria Parks?
Well, I am right now your appointed Hamilton County Commissioner, and I'm from Cincinnati, grew up here, grew up in College Hill, went to Our Lady of Angels High School and graduated from Aiken. I am an Air Force veteran and spent 30 years in corporate America until I changed careers and started working in the nonprofit sector. And so met and formed a really cool relationship with the late and great Todd Fortune. He asked me to come on board to be his chief of staff, and I was honored, and now here I am.
How long were you his chief of staff?
For 3 years.
And so when you think back on, and you know, I know Todd for years and years from just interviewing him, but when you think back on who he was as a politician and as a man, what do you carry of his forward?
Todd was such a man for the people. He embodied bravery. He was courageous. Always, it's really something how I could tell that his very first thought in every situation was to do the right thing. And I carry that with me. And I have to tell you, I miss him so much. And Tanya, I work to make him proud.
I imagine you do. And I imagine that when did you know that he wanted to give you this position? Essentially, I mean, the Central Committee could have chosen anyone, but they were going to follow his wishes. And so when did you know that that was really something he wanted?
We had spoken about it a few times, a month, maybe 2 months out. But then there were some other people that I thought that he would choose. And towards the end, there was so much more to be done. The conversation was that, he wanted his work to be finished. And it came about that I really knew what that was, because actually the majority of the time that I worked with Todd, he was ill. He was in and out of the hospital. And so Todd figured that if he got somebody else in there and I would be the chief of staff, that I would train them. So he said, it may as well be me.
It saves a step. But it's interesting to me, you're not running. Did you not want the position long term? Was there a deal broker? Why is it that you will not try to continue to be the Hamilton County Commissioner?
Well, Tanya, it was too late for me to throw my hat into the ring. The deadline had passed by the time we came up with this. And honestly, I just never considered doing it. But I love it. I love this. And I'm honored to continue to complete Todd's policy agenda. And of course, I get to do what I think is right this time.
So it's interesting to me, you basically, and then the world collapsed. And so you have been faced with a recession, a pandemic. I mean, so many issues. We have political strife, we have personal strife. There are people protesting all the time. And I know he didn't know that he was going to leave you with this, but here it is. So how have you dealt with it? And at what moments have you thought, gosh, Todd, what should I do now?
I wanted Todd to live longer. So that was the first crisis. And so I was heartbroken. And I have to tell you, I had a really hard time moving into his office. And then the pandemic, and then the protests. And I think that what gives me strength, Tanya, is I know exactly what Todd Pretend would do. He would be out in the streets. He would listen to what people have to say. He would, and I know that Todd would have proclaimed racism a public health crisis.
With your appointment, a seismic shift occurred in the commission, which is for the first time that I know of, and I've grown up in Cincinnati all my life, the Hamilton County Commission is all women. It is 2/3 African American.
Mhm.
And so what does that say about this county, where we are, and in a time of protests, whether it's Me Too or Black Lives Matter, what does that say about our county?
It is indicative of the progress that we have made. The fact that it is incredible that there are 3 women. But if we look back, just 4 years ago, the commission looked completely different. Denise is only the second woman in the things that happen here, in the way that the leaders are chosen. It's awesome.
It's not just awesome, it happened not in a generation. It didn't happen over a 10-year decade. This
Right.
happened in a span of, this was just a couple of years.
Right. Yes.
And the whole county is different.
Exactly, because it was in 2017 that Democrats had the majority with Todd and Denise, and in Zoom, yeah, that's right, 3 years, and it completely changed. But I'm so proud to serve with these women, and we lead with good sense. We do things that matter. I'm really proud of the small business program that we enacted with those CARES dollars. And I know that we think differently and probably attack problems differently, but I love it. And I hope that our constituency does too, because we keep them in our heart. We think about them under every circumstance.
How is governing in the time of COVID?
It is difficult. It's because this thing is so big and so much of it is known. When this started out, Tanya, it was like we flicked a switch and our county just shut down. And as we've discovered, there was stuff just around the corner coming at us that we didn't know or were prepared for. But what I'm proud about with this commission is that we know how to juggle, and our team is tight, and we just, when something comes up, we step right up to the plate, and it might be a swing and a miss, but if you pitch to us again, we'll swing again.
I was always wonder, because we know so little about coronavirus, how it, we keep hearing different days, it transfers this way, it doesn't transfer this way. Do you ever wonder if in your responses to the virus that you're getting it wrong?
It is a concern. It is a concern. We follow the guidelines of the CDC, we follow the guidelines of our county health department, and we do our due diligence, and just work as smart as we can based upon data.
When we come back, after serving for months now as an appointed commissioner, does Victoria Parks think she would like to see her name on a ballot? Welcome back. Along with all the other problems caused by the pandemic, the budgets of local governments have been hit hard, and Hamilton County is no exception. During my conversation with Hamilton County Commissioner Victoria Parks on Zoom recently, we talked about the hardship it's causing and how the county is managing it.
You may not be here for it, as far as being a commissioner, but financially, is our county going to be okay?
It will be. It will be. It's going to be difficult. We had cuts. we cut as much as we could in order to continue to provide the services that we are responsible for. Um, I'll tell you what has impressed me about being commissioner and being able to see this commission has been smart. The way that they saved money, and the economic development. You know that we use TIF dollars of in order to build economic development, to provide jobs, to increase our viability and money attractions for downtown, that kind of thing. And I just think that's smart. I think that the way that the county does the garages, those are money making projects and things. And so in the past, the board has been really brave and nervy, I would even say, because, during the recession back in '07 and '08, that's when they started building the banks. I've heard it said that we were the only county in the country that actually had a big project like that going, but it is a moneymaker, and we are building and doing things, and our downtown is beautiful. And so, you know, uh, given that kind of thing, I have learned that, sometimes you have to take a chance. But if you bet on the better good in your community, most of the time you come out right. And I would say that that's anybody's challenge that governs and makes decisions.
Are you sorry you can't continue?
I am.
Is it possible, Ms. Parks, that we will see your name again on a ballot? Or I guess we will see your name ever on a ballot?
I don't know. I don't know. Just like I didn't know that this was going to happen. We'll see. The best is yet to come, Tanya.
Well, I imagine in your wildest dreams, when you were in corporate America for 30 years, you never envisioned yourself as a commissioner of of Hamilton County. And so what comes next for Victoria Parks, we don't know yet.
Just don't know, but I'm excited about it.
Victoria Parks, thanks so very much for being with us for This Week in Cincinnati.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This Week in Cincinnati, we'll be right back. Welcome back to This Week in Cincinnati. I'm Kristen Hartman. We have talked a lot on WCPO 9 News about the healthcare workers who are on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic. They live every day with the satisfaction of helping people overcome the virus, and they live with the sadness that comes for those who don't. I had an opportunity recently to speak with infectious diseases Dr. Dora Savani at St. Elizabeth about her take on COVID-19 4 months into the pandemic.
There's a lot of people that this has affected, as we all know, based on the statistics that is out there. One can beat this, clearly. As I told you, we have had over 237, somewhere in that neighborhood, discharges. People who came in was quite ill, require hospitalization, some of them in the ICU, some not, some intubated, some not, but ill enough that they require oxygen, ill enough that they had to be in the hospital for several days. And, over 237 patients discharged. It's a testimony that one can have this disease, get ill, get better, and go back to its own normal life. Have you lost people? Yes, we have. I mean, unfortunately, we have, and some of those I'll never forget. I mean, I recently lost a gentleman who had been in the ICU for 67 days. And, he got better, he got worse, he got better, so many complications, young, only 52, and that is really something that stays with you forever. So, yes, this virus is a really, in my nearly 40 years career, I've never seen anything like this. At the beginning, we thought this was a pulmonary disease. This was a respiratory virus. And clearly, I cannot emphasize this enough, it's not. This is a virus that causes systemic disease. It affects your sense of smell, so it can affect your breathing, your lungs, affect your kidneys. A lot of these patients with GI symptoms, including just a mild diarrhea, to a more severe cases, including pancreatitis, which is an inflammation of the pancreas. You affect your brain, So it's definitely a virus that causes a systemic disease with a lot of inflammation that is actually involved your whole body.
Are you concerned about spikes right now?
Yes, that is my major concern because people are not being careful. People think we have, I don't want to be political, far from it. This is not about politics, this is about science. And I see people out in my own neighborhood having parties with dozens and 2 dozens people where no one is wearing a mask. People traveling, doing things in places like you see the beaches being totally open and tons of people there. And this is, as I said before, the best thing about COVID-19. It's not to get it. And we know how not to get it. It's just, as I said before, I'm constantly making a comparison and parallel with HIV. Back in the 80s it was fatal, but we all knew how not to get it. And this is preventable. And the best thing that you can do, cheap, but very effective, maintain a social distance, and always 100% of the time have a mask. That decreases tremendously the amount of new cases. So if you just do that, we are not going to have a spike. But if you don't, and if you think this is something minor, it's not. But if you haven't seen this, you only see in the news, I think a lot, especially younger and restless, think that's not going to happen to them. And if it does, it's just a mild disease. It's not. I have seen younger people get extremely ill with this. We don't know why somebody does, somebody doesn't. I have had a 102-year-old lady who actually took in a stride. A nursing home patient got infected, totally asymptomatic, never had a fever, did extremely well. And I have had 27-year-old that was quite ill.
Outside of the precautions we can take on the horizon, what's looking like the fix? What's the fix?
This is only going to get better when we have a vaccine, like all the other viruses, like measles, smallpox. So I don't think we're going to see this going away until you have a very effective vaccine. But it's very important that we have a good vaccine, not any vaccine. We can't hurry up and then have a vaccine that causes side effects, a vaccine that it doesn't protect. So we need to do the studies properly, make sure the vaccine is immunogenic on phase 3 studies, and then mass vaccination. I don't know when this will happen, but I don't see it happen this year. Maybe on the first quarter of next year.
Any parting thoughts? What would you like our audience to know?
Be mindful of this virus, respect it, always wear your mask, and practice social distancing. You'll be safe if you do all of that.
This Week in Cincinnati, we'll be right back.
And that is This Week in Cincinnati for this Sunday. Join us for breaking news, weather, and sports at 6 and 11 tonight on WCPO 9 News. Plus, we're always updating your headlines on WCPO.com.